My name is Margaret Evans. I am 75 years old, and I am about to tell you something I have never told the world before. People in my town think I am just the quiet old woman who waters her flowers every morning and sits on the porch in the evening with a cup of tea. But they don't know the truth. They don't know that for 20 long years, my own children abandoned me in my husband's house, and never once asked of me. Not a letter. Not a phone call. Not even a knock on the door. It all began on a cold January morning. I woke up to silence in the house, something I was used to by then, but that day, the silence felt heavier. I walked to the front door and opened it, just like I had done every day for years, hoping maybe someone had left a note, a package, anything. But there was nothing. Only the wind carrying dry leaves across the yard. I stood there, holding the doorknob, my hands trembling, not because of the cold, but because deep inside, I knew it had been exactly 20 years since I last saw any of my children. 20 years since they turned their backs and left me here, inside the same house where I once cooked for them, bathed them, prayed for them. And as I stood there, staring at the empty driveway, I suddenly heard something, footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. My heart began to pound in my chest. Could it be? But just before I could see who it was, everything went black. Now, let me tell you how it all began. I was born in 1950 in a small town in Illinois. Life was simple then. My father was a carpenter, my mother was a schoolteacher, and we didn't have much, but we had love. I learned kindness from my father. He would fix broken chairs for neighbors without asking for a penny. I learned patience from my mother. She would help struggling children learn to read, even when she was tired. And I carried those lessons into my own life. When I was 23, I met James Evans. James was tall, handsome, with the kind of smile that made you forget your troubles. He worked in a steel factory, and he had hands rough from labor, but his touch was gentle. We fell in love quickly. 2 years later, we married and moved into the little white house on Oak Street, the same house I'm still in today. We had 3 children, Michael, the oldest, born with a mind as sharp as a knife, Sarah, my sweet middle child, who loved to sing while I cooked, and Daniel, my youngest, who had more energy than a pack of wild puppies. I loved them more than anything in the world. Everything I did, every meal I cooked, every late night I stayed up sewing clothes, every extra dollar I saved, it was all for them. But life has a way of testing you in ways you never expect. James was a hard worker, but the steel factory closed when he was only 45. He changed after that. He became quiet. Withdrawn. He started drinking, not every day at first, but enough for me to notice. I tried to talk to him, but he always said he was just tired. I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I knew something was breaking inside him. Still, I kept the house running. I took on extra cleaning jobs, baked pies to sell at the farmer's market, and made sure the children had what they needed. I thought they understood how much I was sacrificing. I thought they saw how much I loved them. But maybe I was wrong. I remember the day things began to change between me and my children. Michael had just turned 20, and he was eager to move to the city. Sarah had started dating a man I didn't trust, and Daniel was still in high school, but he was already talking about leaving. I tried to hold them close, but it was like trying to hold water in my hands, it kept slipping away. Then came the argument. I wish I could say it was just one argument, but it was many small ones that piled up like stones, until one day, the pile collapsed. Michael accused me of holding them back, Sarah said I was too controlling, and Daniel didn't say much, but he stopped looking me in the eye. James didn't defend me. He just sat there in his chair, staring at the floor. And then, one by one, they left. At first, they promised to visit. They promised to call. But weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. I sent letters, I called numbers that no longer worked, I even asked old neighbors if they had heard anything. Nothing. My husband, he didn't ask about them either. We lived in the same house, but it was like living with a shadow. That's when I started talking to my flowers. Sounds strange, doesn't it? But they were the only ones who seemed to listen. I told them about the weather, about the mailman's new truck, about the way the sun looked in the morning. I told them I missed my children. I told them I still loved them. And now, 20 years later, on that cold January morning, I heard those footsteps. But before I could see who it was, before I could take a breath, before I could even hope, I collapsed on the porch. The last thing I remember was the sound of the wind, and the faint smell of roses, even though it was winter. Where are you watching from? I want to take you with me into my story. This is not just about me, it's about what kindness can survive, even in the darkest seasons. It's about how you treat people when they can no longer give you anything in return. It's about what it means to be forgotten, and still hope. James, my husband, was never the same man after the factory closed. He became bitter, and that bitterness made its home in this house. Michael, my oldest, was ambitious, always chasing something bigger. Sarah, my daughter, loved deeply but let others lead her astray. Daniel, my youngest, had a restless spirit, never satisfied in one place for too long. But me? I was the one who stayed. I stayed when the house grew silent. I stayed when the roof leaked in the rain. I stayed when the world forgot about me. And now, after 20 years, someone had finally come back. Or had they? Because just as my eyes closed that morning, I thought I heard a voice, low, urgent, calling my name. But it wasn't the voice I expected.